And for sure, it always plays out the same way. That's why the governments in the world keep using it, because it's so effective. So now that you're starting to see pushback legally, okay, of people saying we're going to protect traditional families, and it's not even a matter of like, okay, there's a war against the families. There's a war against everybody. The whole point of destabilization, demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and the normalization period is for control. And if you can manipulate society, for example, another group of minorities in the States, for example, would be the Mexican illegals. These people will be used the same way the LGBT will be used. Again, another division. So now you have two groups that are divided against the majority. Then you've got the gun owners, for example, in the States. I can't really call them a minority because they're like a super majority there, which they were supposed to be a minority, but they're a super majority. 90 guns per 100 people. I mean, that's pretty darn. That's the ones that are that they know about. They're probably like 200 guns per every 100 people. It's like Canada. There's way more guns in Canada than there is people. But anyway, side note. So, these groups are getting played off each other, so that there could be no unity in the country. The reason why is that nobody can guide the country into any direction that the elites don't want to go. That's one of the main points of it. So what they've been doing in Canada, the United States, and mostly Europe, for the longest time, you're seeing in places like Sweden, places like that, where they keep it at demoralization mode most of the time. When people are demoralized and broken apart into small groups, they're not unified, so they won't speak out against the important things like the central bankers, the central planners, the corrupt politicians. They're too divided on their little causes here, there, and everywhere. So, but when you get to destabilization mode, it's usually the crisis is brought on, and you have to say within the past year and a half, worldwide, there's been a major. The LGBT community goes back forever and a day. So they've been in demoralization mode for a long time. And again, I'm just using this one group just so that the people of that group understand how they're being manipulated. And yes, the LGBT community is the radical parts of it. When I get to the normalization period, you're not going to like what I have to say, but for those who have a little bit of common sense, a little bit of forethought, and think about this logically, when you start to witness it in society, what group gets played off each other, it becomes very, very obvious how dangerous this is. Because when you hit the destabilization mode, okay, you're in that revolting back and forth. So this minority group will do something, they will get supported by one side, okay, and basically the government will build them up, okay, they will build them up to, these people are untouchable, they're uncriticizable, whatever. The rest of the population gets alienated. So when you're in the destabilization mode, which we're just entering it. This may go on for years, it could go on for weeks, who knows. But within the past year and a half, look at all the places that have now got gay marriage. Is it because people become so liberated and so humanitarian and so believing in the rights and stuff? No, people don't change. Leopards are leopards, they don't change their spots. The majority of people in the world do not. They don't endorse gay marriage. They will never, on a majority, it's unnatural to them. Not even from the religious speaking, it's unnatural to them. You can call me racist, bigot, homophobe, but I'm just speaking truth here. That is the reality, okay? And most people know this, that the majority does not support that. But in all the places, look at France, for example, they did the gay marriage there. People died in those riots, and they're still, against it, right? But it's a divisionary tactic. So once you're into that, you'll see probably a brutality against the LGBT. This is why I'm probably telling people, it's just that if you're part of that community, you have to understand you're going to be targeted big time. Right now, the government is protecting you. You're a protected species is what you are. That's why, again, people are not electing gay marriage. What they're doing is, the government says, we're doing this now. And, those again, because they control the media, see all these people, they all agree with it. But out on the street, no, they don't. That's the reality. So what do you get? Well, you're going to have a backlash. People are going to get beat up. Like I said, in Russia, Putin, who is a Russian nationalist, hardcore, and also supports the Orthodox Church, obviously he's not going to endorse gay rights. Okay, so for him, the laws are simple. If if you propagandize kids under the age of 18, you get a $61 fine. You could possibly go to jail. I don't agree with that. I do agree with the idea of not propagandizing, like here in Canada. Basically, the anti-bullying laws going into all the schools is basically the LGBT community. So instead of Adam and Eve, it's now Adam and Steve. You can't discriminate against anything. You have to have 3 types of bathrooms: one for boys, one for girls, one for people who don't know, cisgendered or basically they don't know what they want to be or whatever. So you have to have that. So you're catering to all these different things. The parents have no say in it, and if the parents say anything, they get beaten down. So again, you're working that destabilization. So what happens when we get to crisis mode? I guess I'll fast forward. So you understand what you're seeing now. Well, when it gets to crisis mode, you're going to see like people murdered in the streets, gays beating the snot balls out of or whatever, and then you're going to get to the that's when all the bad things happen. Okay, so major rioting over this. And you're going to see like really bad things happen with the gay community for sure. But then the normalization period, the crisis will be whatever it will be, but the normalization period is the crackdown. At that point, all the progress that the LGBT community made is gone. It will no longer be legitimized. The radicals will be either rounded up, put in jail. Some will probably be killed. This is what happens during the normalization period. They will be silenced, they will be hushed up, they'll lose their funding, unless it's private funding, but all government will cut its tie from it, and at that point, you are on your own. Now, a lot of people say, that sounds stupid, that's never going to happen. You have to understand, all the crises that you look at, okay, Hegelian dialect, problem, reaction, solution. Government creates a problem, people react to it, then there's a solution. Well, what problem, going with just, if you're a gay person, that the majority of people do not support your way of life. So whenever the government gives you something that's creating a problem, people on the other side react to it. Then government provides the solution. So what happens once the boat is rocked too far one way? What do you think is going to happen to you during the normalization period? Well, the boat has been rocked so far the other way that it can only violently come back the other way. Again, this is what the Soviets have been doing for years. This is what Europe has been doing for years. This is what Canada has been doing for decades. Okay, and it all looks like it's legitimate, but you have to understand there can never ever be any legitimate. Now you probably say, yeah, but I have this legitimate, and you'll bring me out in court form. Yes, you as the individual, but as the group, you have no legitimacy. All you have is a group of people yelling in the streets. That's it. That's why Occupy movement got hijacked that way. Like the Arab Spring got hijacked that way. The protests in Tunisia, Bahrain, in Syria, which now has a civil war, which is the crisis. The normalization period is they will wipe out all opposition. So that's the extreme of how it looks, but the play is always the same. Soviet-style ideological subversion. Because they made the playbook, and then people say, hey, this stuff freaking works. Basically, it's forcing the hand of manipulation to get a desired reaction out of a group. So why stay in certain, stay in certain levels? Like demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and then it depends and then normalization period. It depends on what group what they want to do, what they want to accomplish. They will keep people like they have here in Canada for decades in demoralization. They will keep them there so that here's that group, you cannot speak against them. The media supports them, everything like that. It's it's a bigger picture, and most people cannot grab that bigger picture. So, what's okay? I guess the simple question comes down to who benefits from all this distraction? Who benefits from all this division? Well, obviously the government benefits for funding. Again, if you look at the gun rights activists in Canada, the Canadian Shooting Sports Association, privately funded. Okay. Well supported by the people, but privately funded, like the NRA in the States. But unlike the NRA, we don't get any government money in our pro-gun guys. Government doesn't want to support that. None of them do. But the Coalition for Gun Control, the anti-gunners, they get tons of funding. Even though they're a minority, they are not supported. Throughout the country. If you were to put it to a referendum tomorrow, would you publicly fund gun rights or publicly fund anti-gunners? Well, the gun rights are going to win. This is not speculation. Yeah, just living in Canada, trust me, everybody's pretty much pro-gun here. Not everybody, but but the idea is through the media and stuff like that is to considering Canada, they have an easy time. They have one channel, CBC, really. All these other small channels, they don't get the prime time that the CBC gets. So any agenda you want to promote, bang, there you go, you promote it on the CBC. Now the CBC has been taking a few hits, but they're useful idiots as well because government can promote its agendas on there. It's a one-sided view. You cannot have multiple views on any of these issues. Hence why you get the radicals, because they could, I look at the LGBT community no different than the Hitler Youth. Now you're probably saying, how dare you say it? In ideology, not as in what they did, these people, but they're so brainwashed into their own commitment to their cause that they basically cannot be reasoned with, they cannot be. And we know what Hitler did to the Hitler Youth. Most of them were yelling Heil Hitler while he ordered them shot dead. So they're also known as the brown shirts. So is it going to be that drastic with the LGBT? Probably no, but they'll probably lose all their funding and then whatever. But this could go on for years and years and years because really there is no legitimate government backing of the LGBT community at the upper echelon levels. So, and really the whole idea, because I'm just describing one group, and the reason why I describe this group is because it's the group that I see that is moving from demoralization, from that into the second stage. And why are they moving it into the second stage now? Well, here again, who benefits? Well, right now, if we have the LGBT thing taking up the airwaves and people divided and arguing amongst themselves on that, dividing people, what they're not paying attention to is the $17 trillion debt in the States, the fact that they're printing billions of dollars, 65 to 85 billion a month, the fact that we're close to a thermonuclear war, the fact that with China and Japan, now they're also still people that are not realizing what's going on in Ukraine, why it's really a move against Russia, even though they keep saying, these people, they're losing the ball on how they play the game. And usually when they do it, then it goes catastrophic for everybody. So, even in Ukraine, the whole protest, protesters were paid on both sides. You know what I mean? It's a game. It is a game at these upper, so when you hear all the bad stuff about Russia and the gay rights and stuff like that, understand that is propaganda to keep people divided so that they're not paying attention to the central planners, the central bankers. The next issue will probably be the immigration issue in the States. Again, it's a divide and conquer tactic. It works brilliantly. People fall for it all the time because they don't know what they're looking at. And yes, it doesn't mean the people that are participating don't have legitimate grievances or legitimate causes, but what it does mean is that to me, like the LGBT thing is very, maybe if you're one, you're probably going to disagree with it, but it is so low on the totem pole of things that are very, very important that we nip in the bud, i.e. get rid of the central bankers, get rid of central planners, get out of the UN for sure, because that's, the UN uses this everywhere. Crisis initiation is it was done on a very fast scale in Ukraine. That's probably why it's being so polarized and so brought out, all the hypocrisy from Obama. But Russia, look at how Putin. Everybody said, well, Putin's doing this, and you barely hear a peep from him. Now that the Sochi Olympics are over, you're probably going to see Russia step up the game, but they're much better at it than what the North America is. Let's put it to you this way. Who were some of the groups that they got, the radicals of the groups in Ukraine? And this is something, people in the LGBT community, that are there might want to watch out for. Well, they were what they call radical right-wingers, but they're not. They're basically socialist fascists, Nazis. They're literally Nazi party. You see they didn't have swastikas, but they have the Germanic cross. They have, all kinds of Nazi propaganda, basically, you could call them swastikas, but basically these guys are basically neo-Nazis. These were the radicals of the groups. And of course, these guys have no idea. Ukraine is out of the crisis period, so to speak, for now. What's the normalization period going to be? Well, it will be basically these guys are going to be slaughtered. They're going to disappear. They will be put up against the wall and shot. This hasn't quite happened yet, but it was in the process last Thursday I mean, you saw the whole Soviet-style ideological subversion within 4 months in Ukraine. And you also saw the Hegelian dialectic of problem, reaction, solution. Who created this problem in the Ukraine in the first place? The government. Who reacted to it? The people. Yeah, and then who's providing the solution? The government. So that's what's going on with the and again, getting back to Russia, like Russia is not as hard on this gay community as the West is putting out to be, but however, Russia is not as forthcoming about how brutal it is to its gay community as the Russians are. So just so you know, you will be used as a pawn at some point. I know a lot of people will probably say this is all conspiracy theory. Research it. I mean, I can't explain it any better than that. But that problem, reaction, solution, and you will not only notice this with the LGBT community, you will notice it with the immigration thing. Immigration is the next big one to push in the States because it'll get votes. Again, I'm not saying there's not a legitimate thing, but it's that how it gets promoted is not legitimate. The LGBT community, it'd be different if it was all privately funded, but it's not. Here in Canadian schools as well, I guess in American schools, the idea that it's the anti-bullying laws are basically to promote the gay agenda in schools, and they openly admit that. Now, the majority does not want that. You have to understand, these minority groups too do not believe in democracy. Democracy is basically majority rules, 50% plus one. Most people don't believe in democracy because everybody wants their minority group to be at the top. Because if people were to vote against gay marriage, for example, let's say in Canada, the gays push the issue, which this is what I think will happen is they'll push a national referendum and then they'll lose. That'd be one way for the normalization period. It would be push a national referendum on the gay question, of gay marriage. They'll lose, guaranteed they'll lose, and and then from there it's just crackdown. So you could use that with any. Same with if they. That's why they never push referendums, is because they would get majority rule. They don't want majority rule because majority rule you can't manipulate. You can manipulate minority rule, but you cannot manipulate majority rule. And if you have enough minority groups, they can play one off another, and that's typically what they do. So I guess I'm babbling now, but that's what you're seeing. So we're moving into the second phase, and I think why now is a lot of it's to do with the economy, so people are not catching on to what the central bankers are doing. Basically, they're going to rob your future like you wouldn't believe. So if you're out there protesting, maybe you want to put your protest and let's take care of the central bankers first, then argue amongst yourselves. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. Rate, subscribe, share, comment, like, and there you go. So this recipe has been used over and over and over again, and for sure, it always plays out the same way. That's why the governments in the world keep using it, because it's so effective. So now that you're starting to see pushback legally, okay, of people saying we're going to protect traditional families, and it's not even a matter of like, okay, there's a war against the families. There's a war against everybody. The whole point of destabilization, demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and the normalization period is for control. And if you can manipulate society, for example, another group of minorities in the States, for example, would be the Mexican illegals. These people will be used the same way the LGBT will be used. Again, another division. So now you have two groups that are divided against the majority. Then you've got the gun owners, for example, in the States. I can't really call them a minority because they're like a super majority there, which they were supposed to be a minority, but they're a super majority. 90 guns per 100 people. I mean, that's pretty darn. That's the ones that are that they know about. They're probably like 200 guns per every 100 people. It's like Canada. There's way more guns in Canada than there is people. But anyway, side note. So, but anyway, these groups are getting played off each other, so that there could be no unity in the country. The reason why is that nobody can guide the country into any direction that the elites don't want to go. That's one of the main points of it. So what they've been doing in Canada, the United States, and mostly Europe for the longest time, you're seeing it in places like Sweden, places like that, where they keep it at demoralization mode most of the time. When people are demoralized and broken apart into small groups, they're not unified, so they won't speak out against the important things like the central bankers, the central planners, the corrupt politicians. They're too divided on their little causes here, there, and everywhere. So But when you get to destabilization mode, it's usually the crisis is brought on, and you have to say within the past year, year and a half, worldwide, there's been a major. I mean, the LGBT community goes back forever and a day. So they've been in demoralization mode for a long time. And again, this is just, I'm just using this one group just so that the people of that group understand how they're being manipulated. And yes, the LGBT community is the radical parts of it. When I get to the normalization